What's up, guys? It's Justin Stenstrom, the founder of Elite Life Nutrition and the best-selling author of the book, Elite Mind. In today's show, I want to talk about mastering anxiety and give you guys the key to peak performance for elite men. And as you know, if you read the book at all, which came out a couple of years ago, if you read the book at all, you know my backstory with overcoming anxiety, mastering depression, and of course, gaining unbelievable confidence thereafter. It was a long journey. It wasn't like it happened overnight. It took a lot of throwing stuff against the wall to really figure things out. But once I did, I was able to absolutely transform my life. And it was with this, what I call elite mind or elite mindset, that I was able to overcome various obstacles that popped up later in life. So I want to quickly talk about three of the biggest things that I've had to overcome in my life, and using this elite mind, what helped me overcome those things to be able to deal with all types of challenges, obstacles, stresses, loss, all those things that really knock people on their ass in life, and knocked me on my ass, but was able to get me back up and not stay down on my ass for too long. There's a number of things, a number of strategies, a number of different processes, reprogramming of certain things, your subconscious mind, your conscious mind, looking at the world differently in different ways, and dealing with anxiety, especially as it pops up, stress as it pops up on a day-to-day life, especially if you're a high-achieving man. You understand just how much you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis and just how much you're responsible for. You know, if you have a family, if you have a wife, you have kids, you have people that look up to you, that look out for you, that you look out for, people that you're role models for. Maybe you have nephews, maybe you have siblings, maybe you're the oldest child. But as a man, it's very hard to go through life without having to deal with constant stress, and especially as a high achieving man, a high achieving professional, entrepreneur, athlete, even people that deal with even more levels of stress because you're performing at such a high level. You're constantly dealing with this type of thing every single day times 10. Regular person, regular man is dealing with enough stress as it is, especially in today's world where it seems like everybody's attacking men. But as a high achieving, high performing man, you're dealing with 10 times more stress because you're relied upon to get even more things done. So real quickly, just diving back into my story, there's really three stories I want to share with you today to just express the power of having an elite mind and what that can do in your life, and how that can actually really save you from crumbling and, losing it all, so to speak. And really in many different avenues of your life, many different areas of your life, you really can lose it all in a number of ways. And I'm going to share with you exactly how to prevent that from happening. And not only that, how to take this elite mind and use it in your life right now so you can start thriving even more. So real quickly, anxiety, panic attacks 3 to 4 times a week, suicidal depression, all of these things happened over now a dozen years ago, 13 years ago or so. That's really when it all started, 14 maybe even, depending on the math. But it was late high school for me, and I was just one of those kids who always had a lot of things going for him in, like, when I was younger, middle school, that type of thing. But as I got older, for whatever reason, I kind of fell out with some friends I was with and fell out of being, the popular kid, and just really in high school was very lost. Really had no direction, no purpose, had no meaning in life. And I've said this too in many different interviews, many different, platforms where I've been able to speak on, but this type of mindset can happen to anybody. Even if you're someone who came from like a quote unquote, happy family, and you weren't in the broken home, which I wasn't in, by all accounts, I should have been 17, 18 years old. I should have been a happy, kid with direction because I was smart and I knew, I could go places, but I didn't have any direction at all. And I was lost and I was lonely and I was isolated, and all these things mentally were building up in my head to the point where it was just causing me to have incredible amounts of anxiety all the time, and even developing panic attacks 3 to 4 times a week when I would just literally have like a breakdown and didn't know how to control this anxiety because it was so overwhelming. And then, of course, that led into the depression, which led into the suicidal thoughts, the suicidal-like depression, where I would constantly be thinking about all the potential ways I could do it. And I never actually went out and and performed it or attempted to perform that incredibly horrible act on myself. But it was something that I was always thinking about, and it was something that I really considered. And I honestly think if I did attempt it, it would have been a one-time deal. I'm not somebody who, as you probably know, likes to kind of pussyfoot with these types of things. I'm a planner. I think things out. I really, for good, for better or worse, I really dive into things, when I need to do them. Unfortunately, in this situation, it would have been horribly bad. But thank God I never actually took that step. And thank God, right before I actually would have taken that step, I got some help. And it was the traditional help. It wasn't the help I actually needed. It wasn't the help that ended up developing into me overcoming this problem, but it was a step in the right direction where I was prescribed something like they always do. They throw medication at you when you go to the doctors for this type of thing. They threw clonazepam and whatever antidepressant it was, anti-anxiety, anti-depression meds, throw it right at you rather than actually going through more of a holistic, safer approach, because there's a lot of nefarious aspects to medicating, especially a younger man's brain, 18, but before the age of 25. The brain is always developing, always changing, by the way. That's a fallacy that it stops developing at 25, but it's most developing at 25. The connections are most malleable before the age of 25. But so throwing hardcore medications like an anti-anxiety, anti-depression type of drug into a young developing brain is one of the worst things you can do unless you absolutely need it. And there is a time and a place for it. But for the majority of cases, you don't actually need to go that route. There's many other safer alternatives, which I talk about extensively in the book. But in my situation, I was given these drugs. And fortunately, a family member stepped up and was like, you don't actually need to take these. And right before I went down that rabbit hole, which could have completely altered the rest of my life, I stopped. And even intuitively, something inside me told me it wasn't the right approach. Even back then, being, incredibly foolish and unwise, I inherently knew that it probably wasn't a good idea to take these, medications. And then with the guidance of this family member, I quickly was told that there's a different route and you have to go down that route. Basically, you have to take a natural approach to healing this problem, because that other approach is a long trip to nowhere, and it actually ends up hurting you, harming you in the long run, which thankfully I listened to. And although it was incredibly hard and perhaps even longer of a route to get to the end goal, which was calming, taming the anxiety, getting my mind back, overcoming the depression and stopping those suicidal type of thoughts. And then, of course, the longer goal, which was eventually obtaining unbelievable confidence in myself and self-esteem and self-worth and self-love in myself. Although that route took a lot, it was more of a circuitous rather than a direct route to getting to that end means. I'm so much more thankful that I went that route, because it was the proper route at the end of the day. And so I ended up going on a quest of sorts to figure out exactly how to do this thing, and just researching all these types of things. And this was way back in the early days of the internet. There wasn't, all these resources like there are today. We're talking 13 years ago or so, whatever it was, maybe even 14. I'm terrible at math, but it was really the beginnings even of like YouTube, and like there was like a couple videos out on YouTube to kind of give you an idea of how long ago this was. And technology has rapidly evolved in just the past few years. So we have like ChatGPT, all these things coming up now, AI, just like to another level. Every couple of years, it's like not even Moore's law where it's doubling in technology. It's like exponentially increasing by 100-fold every few months. But anyways, the resources back then were scarce, but there was some, and I was just grabbing things as much as I could, throwing it against the wall, trying it out, testing it. Some of the things worked, some of the things didn't work. A lot of the things were horrible and they failed. But I eventually started piecing together things that actually did help with the anxiety, that did help, with stopping the panic attacks, which did help with overcoming and relieving myself out of that, pulling myself out of that depression hole, which can be one of the worst holes you'll ever find yourself in. But long story short, over the course of about a year to 2 years, I was able to totally overcome that problem. And in doing so, and taking that journey on myself and just actually being responsible for my own health, rather than, trying to reach for the prescription bottle of drugs, which I definitely thought about several times in that journey, in that quest, rather than doing that and actually going through it myself and facing all this challenge and all this adversity head on, not only was I able to overcome the anxiety, not only was I able to stop the panic attacks, not only was I able to overcome the depression, but I developed an unbelievable sense of confidence because I figured it out essentially on my own and was able to push through and overcome these major adversities, major life challenges. And with that mindset, I took that mindset, that what was the beginning stages of an elite mindset, and just started parlaying that into other avenues of my life, where I gained unbelievable confidence and could become a speaker and could date women. And, that took the foray into dating coaching and doing that whole thing for several years. And then eventually doing the podcast and speaking on stages and all these things, and the business avenue and the personal life avenue. And it was just like an incredible shift from where I was before having all these problems to developing that elite mindset, and then being able to parlay that into really mastering all aspects of my life in so many different ways. But this elite mind, that was really the beginning of creating this elite mind. And again, I'm going to talk about some of the specific approaches for anxiety and overcoming the anxiety and the stress that was in my life, which really led to all the problems. I'm going to talk about that at the end of the show. But this ability to really perceive different problems, different obstacles that pop up in life, and then overcome them, and not only just overcome them, but really master them, as I said a moment ago, was really the beginnings of this mindset of being able to take on challenges head on and overcome the adversity that comes along with those, the stresses that come along with those, the anxiety that's inevitably there with these major life challenges that pop up throughout your life. And this really was equipped with this ability to overcome such a major thing like anxiety and major panic attacks and severe depression to the point where it was suicidal-like. Equipped with that mindset and that unbelievable resiliency in myself mentally, I took that and then used that later in life when I had unbelievable other challenges pop up, like 5 to 6 years later, for instance, when I started developing these early Parkinson's-like symptoms, the symptoms of having minor tremors, losing muscle control, twitching all the time, spasming, twitching, REM behavioral disorder, which is stands for RBD, which is essentially when you go to sleep, your body shuts down, and because you have enough dopamine and some of the other acetylcholine, some of the other neurotransmitters in your brain, your body actually controls your muscle function subconsciously, and is able to basically shut down your muscles and stop you from hurting yourself. People with RBD, which, by the way, people that get RBD within 5 to 10 years, they get full-on Parkinson's disease, Lewy body disorder, or multiple system atrophy, which is probably the worst of all. But a Parkinson's-like condition within 5 to 10 years, 90% or so, possibly even more, of people that get RBD get full-on Parkinson's-like disease. So I started getting this 5 to 6 years after mastering the anxiety and the depression problems. But so when you sleep, with the RBD specifically, you are basically supposed to have enough neurotransmitter chemicals properly flowing around in your brain to shut down your body and have a safe and natural and healthy sleep. People with RBD, though, because their neurotransmitters are messed up, in particular acetylcholine and dopamine, and serotonin as well, but you lose muscle function, and essentially you start acting out your dreams violently. In many cases, if you're sleeping with a spouse, you like hit your spouse, you kick your spouse, you punch your spouse. It's very violent too. It's not just like a little, like a whack or a slap. It's like a punch. You're literally acting out your dreams, and you're being chased by people. You're getting beat up, killed in your dreams, and you're like fighting back. In my situation, I was literally punching myself awake every single night for I can't even remember how long, like literally every night for years almost. And there was times where it would stop a little bit, but then it would come back, a couple days later. But for years, we're talking about. And it was the worst possible thing you could imagine. So that was another one of the symptoms. And then the migraines, like, for instance, I would slam it, like if I shut the door a little too hard, like leaving the house, I would get this shooting migraine that would just last for weeks on end. If I was playing billiards pool and I cracked the rack, like I hit the cue ball and to break the rack in the beginning of the game, that would cause a headache, a migraine that would last 2-3 weeks at a time. If I used a hammer to simply nail in a nail to a floorboard or whatever it was, or to hang a picture, if I used a hammer and I started whacking that thing, within 20-30 minutes, I would get a headache, migraine that would last 3, sometimes 4 weeks straight. And I'm talking about just like a pressure pounding headache, like the worst that you can imagine type of headache, and it would not go away. And so all these things coupled with the fact that I was in my mid-20s, it was just the worst time possible. And this whole thing lasted several years. It came on kind of slowly. Like there was little things here and there, and then it just kind of out of nowhere came on full board. And, I went to every and I've talked about this in the past, but for those who haven't listened to a couple specific podcast episodes where I've done this, I went to every neurologist, every expert, every doctor, every sleep specialist, every, you name it. I went to them, did every test, the MRIs, the CAT scans, the ALS test where they take this like electrical, whatever it is, and basically zap you all over your body. It's incredibly painful. And just like very uncomfortable, but all these sleep tests, I did every single test on the planet. And in Massachusetts too, we have what they say is some of the best doctors in the world. And I went to some of the best hospitals and whatever clinics and all these things you could imagine. And just nobody had any answers for me. And they essentially said like, there's nothing we can do. So essentially just wait out this thing that continues to get worse and worse by the week. And your health is continually crashing, collapsing before our very eyes, but we can't figure it out, and we really can't do anything except possibly, maybe throw some medications at you, some anti-migraine medications, some sleep medications, some antidepressants, going back to that whole thing. And it was just like an unbelievable, confusing, frustrating, crippling, mentally desperate, and horrible time, like the most anxiety you could probably imagine for somebody who's in their mid-20s and is given a diagnosis of basically early Parkinson's, and you have no idea what to do because nobody has ever reversed that as far as, medical, mainstream medicine is concerned. That has never been done. And so you're basically 25 years old and you're fucked because there's no answers for that. You look good. You look like you're in decent shape because you've been lifting for the last 10 years and taking care of your body, and you look good on the inside, on the outside, but on the inside, you're in shambles. And mentally, you're in even more shambles because you're trying to, put on a happy face and, be there for your friends and your family. And at this time, the podcast was actually even going on, and you're trying to, be there professionally and get things done, but you're literally dying inside. And so all of these things were happening at that time, and it took a real digging inside. It took a mentality of this elite mind that I'm talking about over and over again, of being able to pull myself out of it. And certainly there were days where I was down, and there were certainly days where I felt like I was out, and there were certainly days where it got really, really tough. And there were certainly days where, there were tears shed, and there were thoughts of why me, and this isn't fair, and like asking God, like why do I have to suffer this much, and I held that too. I didn't tell anybody I was going through any of this stuff except for one person, which was my grandma. She's the only person I ever confided in at that time, because I didn't want to put that burden on anybody else, not even my parents or anything, siblings. Nobody knew. No, my friends, nobody knew. I didn't want to put that burden on anybody. And in my mind, whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, but that's just how I am in dealing with things. I didn't tell anybody, obviously, on the show, on the podcast, my newsletter, nothing, none of that stuff. Because in my mind, although it was horrible and it was getting worse and it was, all these things at once, in my mind, I had a belief that I was going to overcome this. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't know when it was going to happen. I didn't know, where to even look, but I knew I was just going to turn over every single stone possible until I figured out the solution to this problem. And given that mindset that I had before with the anxiety and the panic attacks and the depression, it was the same type of thing. It was like the doctors told me this before, and they said I basically had to jump on medication. They don't really have any other options for me. And it took me 2 years of crusading to figure out those problems on my own, but I did figure them out. And again, because I went through that journey, I developed this unbelievable belief in myself that I could overcome these different problems. And that's exactly what I took into this thing. And in this situation, it took a little longer. It took more like 3 to 4 years of suffering with this thing before it was really gone. And 2 to 3 years of just testing everything under the sun, all these diets, all these programs, listening to all these health experts, all these doctors online, the guys that watching all these videos and, checking out this program and trying this diet out and biohacking everything and photobiomodulation and hyperbaric oxygen chambers and looking into stem cells and looking into all these things. And it was just, I was trying, and some of those things, by the way, some of those things I mentioned at the end can be very helpful for sure. But some of them, many of the things I mentioned before that weren't helpful at all. And many of the things actually can be harmful if you do them the wrong way, specifically diets and certain foods and nutrition and supplements and different things that you bring in can actually be harmful in many cases and set you back. But I knew I was going to figure it out. I just didn't know how much suffering I really had to go through before I would reach it, success. And it turns out I was on a crazy diet. I won't even talk about specifics. I don't want to throw any diets under the bus. But you guys know where I stand in many cases by now on certain, radical fad diets that they talk about all the time. Even experts and doctors will say that this diet's great one day, and then, 6 months later they'll backtrack and say it sucks, and the new diet's this one actually. And it's all just variations of random things they put together, or random, propped up studies they read, funded by certain interest groups and things like that. But anyways, those things set me back in many different ways, a lot of struggling, but knowing that I had this unbelievable resiliency, mental resiliency, I knew I was going to overcome this problem. And turning over all these stones, it took me a couple of years, but I ended up coming across something called the medical medium, which I'm like, all right, and it was right after I tried this other diet, and I was really down and out because that other diet didn't work. And it was, I had all these great hopes and promises and, listened to all these great experts and these, cutting edge scientists and stuff on YouTube. And I was really gung ho on this thing, and I thought it was going to work, and it was, did it for 6 months, and then realized by the end of that it was actually starting to hurt me more than it was helping, more than it ever helped. And then I just kind of stumbled across this guy called Medical Medium, and then my story about diving into that and using his protocols, the heavy metal detox and the celery juice, and then all these specific fruits and vegetables that he has and that he recommends. But that was a year and a half of incredible dedication to that protocol, and then another few months of, well, really, I still use much of that protocol today, but strict raw fruits and vegetables essentially for a year, and then slowly tapering off of that to the point where I today use 70% of that diet, which is still a lot of fruits and vegetables and things like that, certain supplements, but it's not as strict or crazy or drastic as it used to be. Maybe even 60 to 70% range, 2/3, you could say, of what it was to heal during that time. But it did heal, but it did work. And it took me, again, all this time to figure it out, but to have the mental resiliency to continue fighting on. Even when I tried this diet, it didn't work. This protocol, it didn't work. Listen to this expert, it didn't work. Listen to this program, it didn't work. Went to all the neurologists and the doctors and all the specialists, and had 20 different scans of my brain, every which way possible. and none of it had worked. It took the mental resiliency, the elite mind, and the elite fortitude to continue to fight on and turn over every single stone until I found the right stone, underneath the right stone, the program, the protocol, the resources that I needed to actually heal myself. And again, this is the mindset that I continue to carry on throughout my life. It was that powerful, and I continued to use it over and over again. And so when I overcame this problem, I really felt on top of the world. I felt like I could not be stopped. I felt amazing. I mean, really, if you think about it, overcoming such an incredibly debilitating condition like that, and realizing that nobody else, as far as mainstream medicine goes, as far as the mainstream population goes, would say is essentially impossible to do, and basically doing it on my own. But giving Anthony all the credit in the world, because he's an amazing guy. He's become a friend over the years. Absolutely love the guy. But I'm talking about as far as doing it day in and day out. There's nobody that did it for me, and there's nobody that's going to do it for you. The cavalry ain't going to come to save your ass. The doctors, ain't going to come to save your ass. You have to do it yourself. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here. You will find resources. You will find certain things. You'll find information. You'll find people that can help you. But you, at the end of the day, have to do it yourself. You have to take that responsibility, that ownership, and be in control of your health and your life. And so again, in this situation, it was like day in, day out, I had to literally just go through this shit and do it every single day. And it sucked, and it was hard, and it was fucking the worst thing you could imagine, as far as dealing with all this shit, and waking up early and still juicing all that celery, and then making the heavy metal detox smoothie, all these different ingredients in it, and then literally sitting there and just eating nothing but fruits and vegetables, 20 something bananas every single day, and then throwing on, a bunch of dark leafy greens and dates and all those things, and just like not going out at, whatever, 27, 8 years old I was at the time, not going out for a full year, didn't see anybody, didn't see any friends, didn't socialize with anybody. I just knew I had to buckle down and do this thing. And I did it. And the only reason I was able to do it was because of this mindset, which is something that I developed way back in the day, as I'm talking about. It really came to me unintentionally, and it ended up being one of the greatest blessings of my life, having to deal with all this shit way back in the day, because it molded me into the person I am today, and it molded my mind into being elite. And that's really what it's all about. So overcoming this incredibly horrible condition, I felt on top of the world, and I really felt like nothing could stop me. And it's really in those moments when you feel like you're on top of the world, you're untouchable, that whatever you want to call it, the universe or God has a way of kind of humbling you and saying, not so fast, little guy, calm the fuck down. You're not as smart as you think you are. You're not as brave as you think you are. You're not as, powerful as you think you are. And it definitely was a period where I thought that because I'd overcome that I would be able to, that nothing could stop me, essentially. Like I could overcome anything that came my way. And honestly, I still feel that way to a great degree. But that doesn't mean that I couldn't be hurt or harmed or suffer, and just as much of a way going forward, perhaps, actually, certainly, even more so than what I'd suffered going through this condition in my own life. Because that, shortly after this, within about a year or two, the COVID thing came around, and everybody, started going crazy about COVID. I was one of the few people who spoke out against COVID. I was one of the few people who actually realized that it was way overblown. And it was, in many aspects, many regards. The media was pumping this thing out and trying to scare everybody. I was one of the few people in the very beginning who spoke out against it. And honestly, because I had this, because I just overcome this incredible thing, I had this sort of bravado about me that, this is shit, this is nothing. And in many cases, I was right in the beginning. But this sort of arrogance about overcoming anything carried on even past the time it should have, if it should have had any time. And the way the universe, as it turns out, had to show me a lesson, I guess, was to not attack me and get me sick with COVID, but to attack somebody I loved more than anyone, and that was my grandma. And it wasn't in year one, like the first wave of it, it was the second year. So 2021 was really like the second round of it. I think when the Delta was starting to come out, my grandma got sick out of the blue. She thought it was allergies. She took it easy. You know, she was someone who was never sick her entire life, by the way, was the healthiest person you could ever meet. An unbelievable energy, could run circles around everybody, like literally like the Energizer Bunny. She was all of 4'10" or 4'9" maybe, but she was just larger than life, you know, energy wise, emotionally, supporting wise. Just like anybody who ever met this person absolutely loved her, because she was just an incredible soul, just had nothing but love to share with people, and just gave herself earnestly to anybody that came around her, and especially myself and my siblings, the kids, and then my sister's kids, who were now, you know, younger, and, you know, 9, 10, whatever, 12 age at the time, but just gave herself and really sacrificed her entire life to essentially raise us kids. I was raised by my grandma. I was raised by this person, and, you know, did everything with her. And she just was always there, like always caring and helping and cooking and cleaning and getting us to school and making sure we were doing our homework and just all the things that a person could do. She was doing two things, you know, the role of the mom and the dad. And just was just unbelievable, just an unbelievable source of light and love. And, you know, that person was the most special person to me, and will always be the most special person to me that I've ever met. There's just some people in your life that you know, meet, whether it's your parents or siblings, or maybe later in life, a wife or a husband, whatever, that you just have an unbelievable connection to that you just can't explain on any level. And that's what this person was to me. And not to say I don't love it, you know, I still love family and all these, you know, amazing people around me today, amazingly too, but there just was something special about this person. And she got sick with COVID. Nobody knew it was COVID until about a week and a half in. And by that time it had spread to her lungs. And again, you know, being a bit arrogant from the whole thing of overcoming these types of things, didn't act on this soon enough and didn't take it as seriously as I should have. And long story short, one thing led to another. She was hospitalized. It crept up on her like rather quickly out of the blue. And then next thing you know, she was on death's doorstep. And the doctors at the pulmonologist and stuff gave her, I don't know, like a 10% chance of living or something like that. And I don't want to be deplatformed or anything, so I won't say what we had given her, but we essentially came across something that we gave to her that saved her life in the hospital, which was an incredible, you know, story of its own to be able to do that. But we had saved her life in the hospital. My sister, really my sister and I went through, you know, incredible hoops to get this to her. And I think you guys can read between the lines a bit. But, you know, they didn't want to give it to her. It was a fight. It was this, it was that. But we ended up getting it to her. And as soon as she got that thing, her health started bouncing back up, and it was like a miracle. It was like unbelievable. Her health just started going right up, and, you know, we thought she was saved. And then she was there for like another week or two just to kind of, you know, clear the whole thing out and make sure she was good. She came out of the hospital. The next 6 months, she was back on her way, recovering her health. Everything was great. She was doing well. Everything was it was like the most amazing story in the world, despite how hard and crazy and scary it all was, you know, when she was in the hospital, all these things, and everything was going great until it wasn't. About 6 months later, she ended up catching a cold or a flu, whatever it was, and it ended up getting into her lungs and causing another infection, pneumonia. It wasn't as severe, but the damage of her being in the hospital the first time and having COVID for like, you know, 10 days unchecked, and then a couple of days of her being in there without having that thing, really did its toll on her. And the fact that she was on the brink of death, and the fact that we also didn't know this until later on, that She actually had damaged lungs from being way back in Peru and living in the mountains. I guess it was something about they used to burn a lot, like, burning leaves and that kind of thing. The place that she was, the village she grew up in, very poor village of Maca, if you've ever heard of it. I don't know what it was exactly, but in this specific area where she lived, they were always burning things, like burning leaves and trees and fire. They always had fires, and whatever it was, like wherever she slept for a number of years, she was breathing in a lot of that smoke, and it damaged her lungs severely. But she was fine. Nobody ever knew about it. And then they discovered it, later on after the hospitalizations and all these things, that there was something already there before. But anyways, long story short, I know this is a little longer than I intended it to be, but long story short, she caught the second pneumonia, and then it was just downhill from there. We tried to do all kinds of things. This mindset of not giving up was something you couldn't tell me otherwise. There was nobody that was going to stop me from doing everything possible to save the person I love most. And I did that. But she ended up essentially having, not essentially, she ended up developing pulmonary fibrosis essentially a couple of months after that point. Exactly when it happened exactly, we can't tell for sure, but it was always kind of there, I think, brewing up. But the pulmonary fibrosis, if anyone who doesn't know it, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, it's really a death sentence. And for some people, they have, a couple of years, or some people maybe a year. Some people it's like 6 months. In this case, it was like 4 months. She had really end stage pulmonary fibrosis. All the doctors told her it was, essentially the end. And we kind of knew something was wrong. We were like, trying to figure out. She was doing all the things right. She was eating incredibly healthy, doing all these things, taking, certain supplements and things that would be great for her. And she was doing so great for a while, which was the saddest thing of all, until she wasn't. So we took her to, IV therapy, high dose, vitamin C therapy, because all these things that she was taking from the pulmonologist and all these things, I mean, they essentially threw in the towel, like, this is it, take her home, hospice, have her, have a few months and, try to make the best of it. But they essentially throw in the towel and they say, that's it. There's nothing we can do for her. But me, this mindset, it's like, I'm not giving up. I'm literally trying everything. IV therapy, I would drive her not every day, but several times a week, about an hour away to this clinic that had high dose IV therapy. And, we did the photobiomodulation because it's really good for the lungs. It brings down the inflammation, all that stuff. We ended up taking her to a stem cell place, which was the best place as far as I know is in Ukraine, from a friend of mine named Eric Marola. He goes like every year or two to a place called M-Cell in Ukraine. They have embryonic stem cells, which are the most powerful because embryonic. Fetal stem cells and embryonic, I believe, are the same thing. You could interchange the names, but embryonic fetal stem cells are in Ukraine. It's the only place in the world, as far as I know, that have the legit fetal stem cells, and they're the most powerful stem cells of all. Obviously, when you have somebody with pulmonary fibrosis, who, by the way, weighed about 120 pounds, even being 410-ish before pre-COVID, to now a weight of like mid-70s, lost an incredible amount of weight, muscle tone, like function, couldn't, by the end of it, was essentially needing to have 24/7 care to do anything, to even sit up in the bed, never mind walk on her own 2 feet. And this is someone that used to run circles around us, could do anything because he was like the Energizer Bunny. So obviously incredibly sad, but also you can't take somebody like that and put them on a plane. They just wouldn't survive it. So the next best thing was traveling out to a place in New Jersey that had these umbilical cord stem cells, which umbilical cord stem cells actually still are incredibly powerful. And there's, anecdotal evidence, studies and, testimonials from people that had incredibly severe cases of things like COPD or things like pulmonary fibrosis or other severe lung diseases and conditions, and were able to heal it using these specific stem cells. Unfortunately, I didn't find this place, I think, until it was too late, and perhaps it was never going to work anyways. But we got this, and it was incredibly hard. She almost died on the way to that place, just literally in the car ride. It was that bad. And, had to have the oxygen and all these things. And she had the portable oxygen, the nasal cannulas was 24/7 at that point. On the CPAP machine, which is essentially to get rid of the CO2 because the CO2 is building up in the lungs. And the CO2 was like poisoning her brain to the point where she'd get like, it was somebody that had severe dementia. They just didn't know where they were. They were confused, lost, just like they couldn't function at all. It was incredibly sad. But anyways, we tried everything. We literally did everything possible. I just, threw everything I could at the wall. And then unfortunately, in this case, it didn't stick. In the last few months, I ended up reaching out to a friend of mine who has psychic abilities. And before the actual diagnosis of pulmonary fibrosis, where they said she has, whatever, maybe 6 months at best to live, something like that. Before we even got the diagnosis, a couple days before that, I reached out to a friend of mine, psychic, and they connected to her higher self, my grandma's higher self. Whether you believe this stuff or not, I do. The psychic friend of mine connected to her higher self and basically said that your grandma is ready to move on. She loves you guys. She, has so much love for you. She has so much, she's so thankful, and, that you've been there for her and, taking care of her and all these things. And she just wants nothing but the best for you guys. And she's like, loves you more than you'll ever know, but she's ready to move on. And this is the psychic telling me that my grandma, her higher self, is connecting and talking to the psychic and saying that she's ready to move on. And this is me, like literally with my mindset of doing everything possible, never giving up, knowing someplace, somewhere in the back of my mind that it was true. And I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to say it. I never told anybody. But I knew it. There was something intuitively that told me that what my psychic, who by the way is an incredible person. I don't want to share her name, but you guys may know it just from, listening to me over the years on the show. But this is somebody with the highest of integrity that would never say anything. And she even said something to that effect, like, I know you don't want to hear this news, but I have to tell you because I can't just like make something up and make you feel good. This is the information I'm getting. This is what she's telling me. I know you, like I connected with her to literally give me an idea, possibly to connect with whatever universal knowledge is out there that I'm missing because everything I'm fucking trying isn't working. I connected with this psychic, incredible person to possibly put me in the direction of something that I need to figure, I need to try, I need to do. Maybe there's something I've overlooked or haven't thought of, or something that's out there, a person I can go bring her to that can work whatever energy or miraculous healing type of thing I need to do to heal this person I love more than anything. That's why I connected to her, to give me something. And rather than that, she was just being fully honest and 100% transparent. And although the last thing I wanted to hear was what she was telling me. She was telling me the truth. And the truth that my grandma's higher self was telling her was she was ready to move on. She had a great life. She loved us. She so appreciative of all the years she got to spend with us. And just like, all these things. But she was ready to move on. And the psychic lady said that she has about 4 months to live. And I'm thinking in my head, like, again, at this time, we didn't know what it was. We didn't have the diagnosis of pulmonary fibrosis, end stage, any of these things. We just knew that she wasn't doing too good the last few weeks. And to hear like 4 months, it was like, what do you mean? 4 months to what? Like 4 months before she's going to get better? Or like 4 months before we're going to find out this miraculous healing thing I've overlooked? Like, what do you mean 4 months? And it's like, no, she's telling me she's got like 4 months to live. She's going to move on. And it was the most soul crushing thing I've ever heard in my life. It was the saddest moment in my life, or I guess the second saddest moment, but one of the saddest things I've ever felt. And I've never cried, I don't think, as much as I cried that night, or even shortly after the call. Like it was an evening call. I just remember crying like the rest of the night and just kind of knowing what was going to happen, despite at the same time knowing that I wasn't going to give up, despite knowing somewhere in the back of my mind that what the psychic was telling me was almost certainly true. I simultaneously knew that I wasn't going to give up, and I was literally going to like double down and just try even harder because we got fucking 4 months to go, and that's it. And I didn't even want to like speak it into existence, so I didn't even share that information with anybody. I didn't even want to utter it aloud. It was essentially between me and my friend, the psychic. And that was it. And, again, being this, this kind of stubborn person in so many ways, stubborn, I think in a lot of good ways, stubborn in not so great ways, but stubborn in this case, good ways, to the point where I'm not going to give up on anything. It was just like, all right, now we got to really fucking try everything. And shortly after that came the stem cells. Shortly after that came a few other protocols that didn't work, but we tried. Also, breathing in glutathione and things like that. Different protocols for really trying to bring the inflammation down in the lungs naturally. And just all kinds of things. Different herbs and concoctions and obviously the supplements and all these things. But it didn't work. And it took me a long time so long story short, 4 months after that conversation with the psychic lady, she did pass away. And the cool thing is she said goodbye to all of us. 1 week before she passed away, she brought all the kids and, the family together and said her goodbyes. And her brother flew in from Spain, who she hadn't seen in years. She said her goodbye to him. And a couple days after he came, she passed away because she knew she was going to go. And she waited. It was incredible. She waited for him to come to say her goodbyes. And then she was ready to go. And whether you could say, whether you believe in that thing or not, whatever you believe in, it's fine. I know what I believe in. But it was, and it was tough, but it was an incredibly tough time. So I say all this to say, it was the hardest time in my life. I thought the anxiety was hard. I thought the depression was hard. I thought the panic attacks were hard, and they were incredibly hard. And then, of course, I thought the Parkinson's was incredibly hard, and it was, the sleepless nights and the RBD and the whacking myself in the face to the point where I had to tie my hands down so I wouldn't be able to lift my arms up higher than, to get close enough to my face so I wouldn't knock myself out or knock myself awake every night. I thought those days were really tough. But it turns out that losing somebody that you love unconditionally is even more tough. Losing somebody that you care about so much that you would do anything for, you'd sacrifice your own life for that person. And you do everything for that, everything to try to save that person, and it didn't work. That's incredibly tough. And going through that alone, where the last 4 months really she was in my care, and the last year and a half that she lived post being hospitalized for the COVID was really just a nonstop, like just sleeping over. I was even sleeping at my sister's house, which is where she was staying originally, because I would stay up all night to keep track of her and, make sure she was getting the proper nutrition and vitamins and all these things, and keeping track of her respiratory rate and in her heart rate and her temperature and all these things, just to make sure that she was, on their path to recovering. And then when she started, for 6 months, she was doing great. And then when she started declining, I did even more of that, essentially, to figure out, like, why is this thing happening? Why is her, why did she get off oxygen for a few months and was looking great, and now she's back on the oxygen? And why do we have to bring up the oxygen? Why do we have to, do all these things? And the last 4 months, it was like, maybe even last 6 months, it was like I slept an hour, maybe 2 hours a night. Not even a night, but during the day when I would get a break, because all night I'd be awake watching her breathing and making sure she was okay. The respiratory rate wasn't too high. The heart rate wasn't too high. Her oxygen levels were at least 96, 97 and up. Her temperature was fine. She didn't spike a fever. And it was just the last few months, to the point where she just was incredibly crashing, to the point where she couldn't sit up in bed, where she had to have a wheelchair to even go to, wheel her to the bathroom, to the point where in the very end, the last few weeks really last month or two, she started at times, because of the CO2 buildup in her brain, where she just wasn't even there. I'd get her onto the wheelchair and wheel her to the bathroom, and then she would be in the bathroom and she wouldn't be able to wipe her own ass after going to the bathroom. And for someone who literally raised you and wiped your ass as a kid, now as a man, as an adult, you're having to do that with somebody who, by the way, wasn't even that old, was only 70 years old at the time she passed. But having to do that as a man, caring for somebody like this who literally raised you was one of the hardest things I ever dealt with. And at the same time, one of the saddest things to see somebody in that state and to not be able to just help them, and knowing all these things, these, incredible healing things and all these types of modalities, seeing it not work and not be effective it was just incredibly tough. And at the same time, that was just dealing with what was going on with her. I remember just sleeping on my couch when I could, like an hour, like I said, an hour or two a day, because all night I'd be on the couch right next to her couch, just like watching her and making sure she was okay. And, every hour, half hour, I'd take her pulse and temperature and all these things. And maybe it was a little too much, maybe it was a little crazy, but I just knew that I had to, and I tried to at my very best, fix the issue and heal up the problem, especially in those last 4 months where I really needed to be on track of things. I just dove headfirst into trying to make this work, because I knew if I could fix it and I could solve it and I could heal her, then everything else would be good later on. I could fix all these other things. I had 3 businesses at the time. I ended up really letting all of them like drop down incredibly. One of them crashed completely, and the other 2 were barely hanging on for life. I was dating this woman at the time who I really loved, and I thought potentially would be my future wife, and would have a family with her. That relationship ended up falling apart. And just like a lot of things personally, I sacrificed a lot of things personally just to be there for her. And it's not like I never even thought about any other option. It wasn't like there was any real other option. There was no choice for me as a man other than to do exactly what I did. And that was give everything I possibly could to try to heal this person who I loved more than anything. And I'd do it all again, over and over again, despite what I went through, despite the struggle of it, despite the stresses of it, the anxiety of it, the constant day-to-day, battle of it all. And especially the last 4 to 6 months where it was just really, really bad. It was really tough, and it was really sad, and it was the hardest thing in my life to have to go through that. And I don't want to say like I didn't have help, because I did have some help from family, other family members. My sister and my mom ended up like coming through and helping out at times, but everybody can do what they can do. And it would have been nice to have some more help at the time. It would have been nice if other family members stepped up, if people were there a little bit more. Because at the very end, it was literally just me and my grandma, and it was like a whole period of like a month, 6 weeks, maybe close to 2 months, towards the very end, where it was literally, I didn't sleep at all. And I didn't have like a lot of help to allow me to sleep, to even go to like, and I'm not blaming anybody. I'm really not. At the time, I really was angry that some people didn't step up, that people weren't there more, that family members didn't step up more, especially for someone who was so important and helped everybody else out unconditionally. All the family members and stuff helped everybody out unconditionally, gave her life, sacrificed her life for everybody. And to me, like, as a man, as a human being, if you repay people like that, you don't just you don't forget about people that help you out in your life. I'm somebody who always remembers people that helped me out, and I'll never forget about somebody who's helped me, and I'll never balk at the chance of repaying somebody, or trying to, at the very least, at my utmost, to try to repay somebody who helped me out. And so like but that's me. And I understand people are different, and you can't hold that against people. People do what they can do. And you can tell them and I did, you can express your views, you can express your point of view, and you can express what you expect other people to do. But at the end of the day, you can only hold yourself accountable. And those people hold themselves accountable too. And those people can do what they can do. Now, if they choose to do something and they don't live up to their, own expectations or whatever, that's on them. But it's really on you to realize that you can only control yourself, and you can only control your own actions, and you can only control what you do on a day-to-day basis. Other people have their own lives going on, and perhaps they're going through their own struggles, or, maybe they can't deal with the anxiety, they can't deal with the stress, or they can't deal with somebody, falling apart that they love before their very eyes. And it's easier for them to kind of, not see that or deal with that. It is what it is. I'm not complaining. At the time, it did hurt. It did suck, but I am a forgiving person, and also I'm someone who understands that. And it took me a while too to understand that. I'm not gonna, pretend it was easy, but I do understand it. I understand it now. I understand that everybody's different. Everybody has their own priorities. Even the person that I was with in the relationship at the time, as much as I thought that person really could have stepped up more and helped, somebody that they thought that they claimed to love, and see as a potential husband and all these things. Like, I feel like that person could have stepped up more. That also is what it is. Like that person who is, by the way, a great person, a great woman, awesome person. Really do still have a lot of love for that person, but it's just not the right person for me. I look and, it's just whatever. It didn't work out. That person is meant for somebody else, and I'm meant for somebody else down the road. And I can't hold that against them because they didn't live up to expectations I had in my own mind about how they should be. It doesn't mean they're not a good person. It just means they're not the person for me. They're not living up to what I want or what I expected. But they have their own things going on, and they possibly, did what they could do with, or what they thought they could do in their own way. And that's totally fine. I understand it. It's okay. But long story short, I mentioned this last thing because it's the most recent thing that's occurred in the past couple of years with me. And again, it wasn't like it was easy. It was hard. And guys, I'm telling you, like, life is hard. You're going to get these things that pop up in your life. You're going to have crazy things that knock you on your ass. You're going to have things that, seem like torture and seem like hell, and have you praying to God and wondering why he chose you and why you have to suffer to go through all these things. Why does life have to be so unfair? That's what you're going to say at times. And I'm here to tell you guys, if you have this elite mind, you will be okay. You will overcome these things, these major life obstacles, these challenges, these struggles. You will overcome them. And I firmly believe that no matter what comes your way, if you're equipped with this mindset, nothing can stop you. Now, does that mean you're always going to get the outcome that you want, especially in regard to other people that you can't control? No. But it does mean that mentally you're going to be able to handle it. You're going to be able to ultimately come out on top. Again, with situations like with other people, in this situation, I firmly believe that if my grandmother felt like she wanted to be here still, if her higher self, if her spirit, if her soul still felt like there was things to do in this life, in this world, she would still be here today because we did everything possibly right. And I think it's been incredibly tough and it's funny, she actually came to me in a dream, vivid and clear. I'll talk about this on another show, but several months after she passed away, she came to me as clear as I'm looking at you now, or you're looking at me. She was right there, right next to my bed one night, and we had an incredible conversation, short conversation, but an incredible conversation. And then, just as soon as it began, it was over. But it was incredible, and it all made sense to me. And I'll talk about that one day. But I firmly believe if she wanted to be here, if she felt like there were still things for her to do in this world, in this realm of reality, she would still be here. But she had done everything she wanted to do. She had accomplished all her goals of what she came here on this planet to do. And now she's in another place. She's in an afterlife. We can't see her physically, obviously, just like you can't see someone physically that you love that's passed away. But those people are still here spiritually. They're still here in their essence, in their soul. And I firmly believe this. Again, whether you're religious or not, I firmly believe that we all get to see these people again. We all get to actually experience them again in another form in the afterlife. And I look forward to that day. I truly, truly do. But in the meantime, I know I have to do the things that I have to do still in this world. I have goals, I have missions, I have purposes that I have to get done, and I have things I need to accomplish. And I know my grandmother wants nothing more than to see me achieve these things and to help people out and to continue to help other people out. So I live with that in mind, and that gives me the fuel to actually keep pursuing these things, despite, how horrible it was to have lost her and to really have not been able to heal her like I wanted to. I'm fueled by the drive and the desire to achieve my own goals that I know she'd be so proud of, if she was here to experience them. But even, now still in the afterlife, is certainly watching upon me. And I got to make sure I don't fuck up too badly, because I got a lot of high expectations coming from her. But anyways, you guys, if you're equipped with this elite mind, there's really nothing that can stop you. The world, God, whatever you want to call it, the universe, will throw all kinds of curveballs at you. Will throw all kinds of things at, your way, your family's way, your loved one's way. Life is going to be life, and things are going to happen to you, but you got to be able to bite down and face them head on. And again, you may not always get that outcome that you want, but being able to deal with that, having that resiliency, that elite mind, is the most important thing of all. Because without it, you got no chance. But with an elite mind, you can basically overcome anything. And especially when it comes to yourself. I firmly believe if you have the desire to succeed, you have the desire, the willpower to want to overcome something, a problem, if you have this elite mind, you can do it. Real quickly, I want to wrap things up in just a moment. We're going on about an hour or so now. I really wanted to make this like, a 30-minute show, but you know how that goes sometimes. Anyways, today business is booming. Once again, my dating life has been better than ever. Honestly, it's crazy too, because every time, you guys know this, but every time there's a breakup over the years and you really love somebody, it's really tough, to really, to kind of like, to bounce back from that. It's like really tough. But then once you bounce back from it, you're always like, and there's like, different people that you meet, there's different women that you meet, and it's like, I couldn't see myself, and you're like in the moment, you can't see anybody else except that one person you love, which is great. But then it's like you meet all kinds of other people or whatever, later on, and it's like you can't picture yourself just having settled down with that one person way, long ago. And it's like, well, I never would have met this person or that person or that person if I hadn't, settled down with this person. And again, like, as great as things may be, there's a reason why things happen. I think there's a reason for everything. I think ultimately, everything happens for a reason, like personally, professionally, all these things, they're all different challenges. They're different things that steer us in different directions in life. And, we just have to really be open to doing our best and trying to do our best and overcoming these challenges, but ultimately leaving it in God's hand to decide what we're going to face and what we're supposed to face and what path our life is supposed to go. But with that said, here's a couple of quick tips I want to leave you guys with. First of all, developing an elite mind comes down to a number of different factors. We're talking about multi-factors here. We're talking about the subconscious mind, the conscious mind. We're talking about habits and routines and strategies and techniques and modalities and, different ways of reprogramming the mind and different ways of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and different ways of handling stress and dealing with stress and handling these negative things that come your way and being able to control your mind and being, level-headed in the most stressful, anxious times and the most pressure-filled moments of your life. Like, there's so many facets to developing an elite mind, but here's a couple of quick tips for you before we wrap this episode up. Nutrition and supplements. Nutrition, I mentioned this a little bit already, but getting more fruits and vegetables into your life is incredible. Bananas, apples, oranges, pears, pineapple, strawberries, wild blueberries. Wild blueberries are the best. All these things and more. Of course, the dark leafy greens are amazing for you. Cilantro, if you want to pull out heavy metals throughout your body, incredible. Supplements, we're talking ashwagandha, magnesium, lemon balm. These are all incredible for anxiety, for stress. Ashwagandha, there's multiple studies out there that talk about how incredible it is at lowering cortisol in your body. Vitamin C to keep your immune system up. Turmeric to help manage the inflammation levels in your body. B12, B complex, all of these and more. Incredible. So important to get the right inputs into your body so that your body can actually naturally create the proper and healthy chemicals for proper and healthy brain function, the neurotransmitters of the world. Also, when we're talking about reprogramming your mind, we're talking about things like self-hypnosis and reprogramming, figuring out the right structure too, and the right protocol, the right script, the right usage of words, the right way to implement all of these things into your reprogramming on a day-to-day basis. Self-hypnosis can be incredibly powerful when it comes to actually reprogramming your mind. Of all the things I've ever used modality-wise when it comes to retraining the subconscious mind, which is, by the way, in control of approximately 95 to 98% of your overall mind. The subconscious mind is the most important thing. And, you have these feelings and emotions and all these things that pop up when you deal with people or whatever events in your life, different things that pop up. You have all of these things that come your way, but it's your subconscious mind, and it depends on how your subconscious mind is programmed for the outcome of how you react, how you deal, how you feel with these inputs, these stimuli of how you're going to be in those moments, how you're going to feel, how you're going to think, how you're going to act. That's all subconscious mind programming. So you may think like, oh, I want to feel this way. I don't want to overreact. I don't want to be stressed out. I don't want to feel anxious because something pops up, because you're too busy at work, because you got into a fight with your wife, because all these things, you're in traffic. You might not want to think or feel these certain ways, but the subconscious programming in the back of your mind is what's dictating how you're going to deal with and feel in those moments. So if your subconscious mind programming is off, your feelings, your emotions, the way you respond is also going to be off. So we got to, really think about reprogramming the subconscious mind. And one of the most effective tools for doing that is self-hypnosis, among others. There's also several others that work really well in combination as well. But self-hypnosis is incredibly powerful. Also, living in the present moment is just incredible when it comes to not thinking about the past, because you're dwelling in the depression land when you're thinking about what you wanted, what you could have had, what you missed out, what you lost, all these types of things that people can get stuck in dwelling on, especially when they're going through a crisis or when they're facing all kinds of stress on a day-to-day basis. They tend to think about the past and dwell in the things they missed out on. In the future, you future project. That's where anxiety comes from. You're thinking, literally projecting yourself into the future and worrying about all these possible things that could come. That's anxiety. Anxiety, stress comes about when you're putting yourself into the future. Your mind is literally thinking about all the worst outcomes of what your life could what could happen in your life, what could eventually pop up as far as a negative thing in your life, and that's all future projection. And that's all living with anxiety. So bringing it back down to the now, living in the moment, living in what's in front of you, what you see right now, all of those things are incredibly powerful. There's a whole strategy, though, of how to actually do it properly and how to bring yourself into the present moment, no matter what you're facing at all times. It's really just like, as simple yet profound as living in the now. But yeah, there's all types of different strategies for doing that. And the last thing, too, is using NLP techniques for overcoming loss, for grieving, even exes, like ex-girlfriends, ex-husband, ex-wives, if divorces, all these things. And also NLP for anchoring different positive emotions like confidence in certain situations, like contentment, like better ways to deal with stress. All of these things you can anchor into the most stressful parts of your life and actually feel so much better in those moments if you properly anchor a good trigger with how you want to feel. So like in certain situations where you're super stressed out, you could create a trigger for actually feeling incredibly happy and relaxed or content. Or in situations where you want to have more confidence or belief in yourself, or like an ability to perform under high pressure situations, high stress situations, you could anchor the feeling of confidence and actually be 10 times more confident in that moment simply by having that trigger to go to when you need to. So this is another incredibly powerful tool when it comes to reprogramming your subconscious mind and also reprogramming your life to better deal with and handle stress and anxiety. As it turns out, guys, I just created a program called Elite Mind Mastery Coaching Program. And you can find it at elitemind.coach. It'll take you right to the page where you can actually sign up for a free 15-minute call with myself where we talk all about your situation, what's going on with you, and what we can do to potentially get you back on track and see if it's a good fit for us to work together. So guys, go to elitemind.coach right now. I'm only doing this for a limited time. I actually don't know how long I'm going to do it for, but right now I'm only looking for like a handful of people to work with. I've done coaching in the past. I've loved coaching in the past. I've, worked on a number of, different situations and worked with countless people with confidence and the dating thing way back in the day. But I've never actually done a coaching program when it comes to the most important thing of all, and that is your mind and developing an elite mind to deal with all the stresses of the world that we live in today, especially if you're a high achieving, high performing man. If you're a high performing professional or entrepreneur, or perhaps even an athlete, or somebody who just deals with an incredible amount of stress and you're performing at an elite level, those are the guys I want to work with the most. So again, go to elitemind.coach right now. Sign up for a free call with myself. We'll get on a free call and go over your situation and talk about how we can actually help you right now achieve your elite level of performance and not only deal with stress, not only deal with the anxiety that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, which again is 10 times more than the average man out there, but actually take your performance to the next level and lower those stress and anxiety levels and be able to even make as much, if not more money than you're currently making without all that stress and anxiety that's eating away your happiness, your contentment, your ability to relax, and your ability ultimately to enjoy your peaceful time with your family, with your friends, possibly with your children, and the activities that you used to love doing but don't have time to do anymore. Like, I don't know about you, but for me, it's like grabbing a drink at the bar from time to time, going fishing, going hunting, playing tennis, like, basketball with friends, like all these things that I love to enjoy. If I couldn't do those in my life anymore, I would, probably be incredibly stressed out too and incredibly, overwhelmed from time to time, because I love creating and have the past few years, especially with all these, things I've overcome. Now that I'm not dealing with that anymore, I've just had an unbelievable ability to open up my schedule and be more productive, get more things done, and create these incredible businesses while at the same time still having free time to go and enjoy all these things I love to enjoy and spend even more time with friends and family and get even closer with those guys that I haven't been able to do in the past. And it's been absolutely incredible using these tools to actually help bring the stress down, bring the anxiety down by actually at the same time being more productive and making more money than ever before while still enjoying life at its absolute best. And that's obviously at the end of the day, ultimately what we like to call here an elite life. So if that's you, feel like you're a high achieving man, a high performer, an elite man, go to elitemind.coach right now and sign up for a free call with me. And I would be happy to go over your situation, what you're dealing with, and talk about some of the things that we can do to help you out right away. So that's it for today, guys. Take care. Hope you enjoyed this show today, and I will talk to you soon.